Thus, a monument was set up on a mountaintop that was intended to reveal an emperor's love for his people. The Hongwu emperor continued to favor Lushan. For thousands of years, it was the tradition among China's emperors to revere high mountains. In the minds of the ancient Chinese, the towering mountain was a symbol of supreme power. Six and a half centuries ago, an orphan by the name of Zhu Yuanzhang ascended China's imperial throne. As the Hongwu emperor, he founded the Ming dynasty, and Mount Lu entered the political arena. Even before the advent of the Ming dynasty, Lushan was well known in China. Its popular image was of an idyllic place insulated from the unrest, slaughter, and tumult of the outside world. For centuries there was intermittent warfare between the northern nomadic tribes and the agricultural peoples further south. But the regions south of the Yangtze, including the Lushan area, remained immune. People pictured Lushan as a sort of paradise. An unknown Yuan dynasty poet described it thus. In the year 1275, news reached the Mongolian ruler Kublai Khan in Dadu, today's Beijing, that his armies had captured the southern Song city of Jiangzhou beside Mount Lu. For the first time in history, Lushan was occupied by an enemy force. According to the hierarchy of the Yuan dynasty, which was established by the Mongolians, the so-called southerners occupied the lowest rung of the social ladder. The authorities viewed them as nothing better than animals. In fact, a Mongolian chief was appointed to supervise 20 households. He had absolute power over their lives and property, their wives and daughters. At Huangyan in Lushan, there are the ruins of a 600-year-old fortress called Guze Fort. In the latter years of the Yuan dynasty, Xing Wanhu and Jiang Yeji from the Lushan area led an uprising. They provoked a mass revolt against the Mongolian rulers across China. After years of fighting, two rival peasant armies faced each other at Jiangzhou, at the foot of Mount Lu. The two armies were led by Chen Youliang, based on the middle reaches of the Yangtze Basin, and Zhu Yuanzhang in the Jianghuai area. Both aspired to the imperial throne. They had fought a series of battles until finally their armies faced each other across the Jiaojiang River by the ancient city of Jiangzhou, today known as Zhejiang. For centuries, this city beside a river had been at peace. But now, in the autumn of 1363, a bloody battle would be fought there that would decide which of the rivals would become emperor. Beneath Poyang Lake Bridge, the Yangtze River and Poyang Lake meet. On the 6th day of the 7th lunar month in 1363, the most famous naval engagement in Chinese history began. Zhu Yuanzhang and Chen Youliang threw 800,000 soldiers into the battle. After 37 days of fierce fighting, Zhu Yuanzhang's navy, despite being outnumbered, had destroyed Chen Youliang's main force. Now, the path lay open for Zhu Yuanzhang to seize power. By the year 1392, peace had returned to Poyang Lake and Mount Lu. 24 years had passed since the founding of the Ming Empire. Zhu Yuanzhang, as the Hongwu Emperor, had ordered that the people should be cared for as if they were saplings or young birds. As a result, the country had largely recovered from the many years of warfare. But then, an imperial decree was issued that would disturb the tranquility in the LUSHAN area. People for hundreds of kilometers around were summoned to take part in an immense construction project that would rewrite the history of Mount Lu. The project was dedicated to an immortal the local people had never seen and had scarcely ever heard of. The immortal went by the name Zhou Dian. Nobody knew anything about him, except that he had been an itinerant monk. But the emperor had proclaimed that in Lushan, Zhou Dian had performed miracles to help him defeat Chen Youliang.
朱元璋可能是自己有那个梦中或者神话的意思，应该是这样，因为我所读过的这个历史，再就是说他整个这个成长过程当中，好像没有这个人。
In 1393, to commemorate this deity who had helped him, the emperor decided to have a statue erected in his honor. There would also be a stele bearing an inscription by the emperor on top of Mount Lu. But why was the emperor suddenly so anxious to commemorate someone who had helped him 20 years before?
洪武25年呢，朱元璋的长子朱标去世了，他的太子死了以后，突然想起这个人来呢，我觉得这里头呢就有耐人寻味的地方，居然都找不到。那么，而我的朱家王朝又不能这个就此告终，我还要继续下去。那么朱元璋立这块碑呢，一个就再次表明我皇权神授，我是得天之助，朱家的天下是黄土永固的。
And so a stele of fine marble was cut, and an inscription, biography of the immortal Zhou Lian in the emperor's own handwriting, was transcribed onto it by the famous calligrapher Jian Xiyuan. The palace treasury was put in charge of transporting the huge monument to the top of Mount Lu. Labourers were recruited from all the nearby prefectures to build a road from the foot of the mountain to its top. It was the first road ever built on Mount Lu. The perilous road was given the name Ancient Path with 99 Twists. Today, lush vegetation blocks the view at every turn. But even after 600 years, there are still signs of the harsh conditions faced by the road builders. On one stone lying beside the road, there are clear signs of drilling. Archaeologists believe it may have been a flagstone. At the top of the road, there is a rock carved with the words, "Road built by Pan Se of the palace treasury." Historians agree that Pan Se must have been the chief official in overall charge of the project. He would have put his name to the stone following the project's completion. No doubt, Pan Se thought his name should always be associated with the road. However, there's no mention of the ordinary road builders in official files. Since 1982, researchers from the LUSHAN Cultural Relics Management Department have been investigating the ancient path with 99 twists in the hope of discovering the identity of some of the ordinary road builders. And they've succeeded in finding 6 Ming Dynasty stone carvings associated with individuals. The weather-beaten inscriptions are the only memory of those humble road builders. The road was completed after a year of intense work. The next problem was how to transport the huge stone to the top of the mountain. No historical documents have been found that contain any record of this, but the consensus among historians is that manpower was used to carry the huge stone up the hill.
我想最大的可能的就是几种方法呢并用，但是用牲畜拉的这种可能性很小。 是吧？那么从碑的这个，直到今天600多年了，这个从碑的完好的程度上来看呢，如果是从地面用那种滚的，慢慢的像那个滚动摩擦那样拿上来的可能性呢也不大。为什么？那样的很容易损坏那个碑的这个表面。庐山的施工是很厉害，很能干的，他们是靠抬。
Even for men who were used to carrying huge loads up the mountain, this was a considerable challenge. So, first of all, they would have chosen a sturdy and solid tree as the main axle for moving the stele. This log, called the Great Dragon by the locals, was the key element in their transport system. The load-bearing part of the system consisted of the axle known as the Great Dragon, along with 2 other large logs and 8 smaller ones. The various elements would have been fixed together by ropes. By weaving the ropes together, the load would have been distributed more evenly across the whole system. And so, one morning in the year 1393, the stele, 4 meters high, 1.3 meters wide and 0.3 meters thick, and weighing several tons, set out on its journey up the mountain. According to historical records, all the able-bodied men in the LUSHAN area were enlisted in carrying the huge stone. Slowly, like a swarm of ants, they inched their way up the huge mountain. In all, it took nearly 2 years to build the road and transport the stone to the top of Jinqiao Peak on Mount Lu, but the official Ming Dynasty history contains only a few words about it. In the era of Xinwei, officials were dispatched to offer sacrifices to the immortal Zhoudian in Lushan, where a stele with an imperial inscription was erected. There is no record as to how many people were involved in this enormous project and what happened to them afterwards. Thus, a monument was set up on a mountaintop that was intended to reveal an emperor's love for his people. In the autumn of 1393, when the stele was erected, Lan Yu, Duke of Liangguo, was executed, even though he had rendered outstanding service to the dynasty in war. 10,000 members of his extended family were also rounded up and killed. By this time, virtually all the officials and generals who had supported the emperor in coming to power had been slaughtered.
朱元璋他对待这些人的这种办法，实际上呢是使自己从为一个平民皇帝走向一位神话皇帝，这个是他的 最大的愿望。因为大家知道吧，距离可以产生美，距离它同时可以产生敬畏，产生猜测，产生敬仰。
A few years later, Jian Shiyuan, who had transcribed the imperial inscription onto the stele, was found guilty of violating rules when inscribing a panel for the imperial palace in Nanjing. He was sentenced to public beheading. Rapidly, the dynasty whose name suggested brightness of the sun and moon was becoming known for cruelty and oppression. People were living in fear and were especially terrified of an organization of informers known as the Imperial Bodyguard.
明朝有一句话，一闻听场卫如破胆之霹雳，也就如同就是说，你小孩在家里，比如哭了，最后大人说你别哭了，别哭了，场卫来了，小孩就不哭了。
Historical records reveal that Zhu Yuanzhang, as the Hongwu emperor, further demonstrated his reverence for the immortal Zhou Dian by ordering the construction of a temple complex in his honor. A statue of the deity was enshrined there, and to mark the occasion, the emperor presented the temple with another statue, this one made of gold, of the deceased crown prince, along with a drum made of elephant hide, a bronze bell, and an iron pot. The Ming Dynasty iron pot unearthed from the ruins of Tianshi Temple is now housed in the basement of the local museum. It is a key piece of evidence supporting the historical records. For whatever reason, the Hongwu emperor continued to favor LUSHAN. Whether it was because he had won the final victory that made him emperor at the mountain's foot, or whether it was because he found he could communicate with heaven there, the mountain seemed to have special significance for him. For thousands of years, it was the tradition among China's emperors to revere high mountains. In the minds of the ancient Chinese, the towering mountain was a symbol of supreme power.
"皇帝统治天下叫做奉天承运，我们用什么来沟通上天呢？天高高在上。山和天最接近呢，所以山就成为沟通上天的一种阶梯。
作为这个统治者来说，山呢代表着财富，它这个山是万物所生长的一个场所，它是财富的象征。同时呢，山也代表着恩德。因为山生长万物，但是并不私有，所以为万物所瞻仰。山代表着沉着稳重的美德，它是沉稳的，它不变迁。第四，山也代表着诚信的美德。
During the Ming Dynasty, Mount Lu enjoyed the same status as the country's other famous mountains: Mount Tai in the east, Mount Hung in the south, Mount Hua in the west, Mount Hung in the north, and Mount Sung in the hinterland. Instead of the 5 famous mountains that had been celebrated since the 8th century, there were now 6.
做过放牛娃的，做过和尚，而夺取了天下的这么一个开国皇帝啊，对于自己的政权的严肃缺乏自信心的时候，必须要拿起传统的这个老的皇帝们。封建统治者们已经使用过了的旧有的办法，制造神话，封一个山为他的皇家的山，作为他呢，这个是一个神，是一个龙，是个真命天子的一个见证。
The Hongwu emperor issued an edict that each year the local officials in Xingzi and Nankang at the foot of Mount Lu should climb the mountain along the path with 99 twists and offer sacrifices at Tianshi Temple. In all, 3 Ming emperors issued edicts conferring special status on Mount Lu, and 2 steles were set up there bearing imperial inscriptions. But during the Ming dynasty and afterwards, Lushan had an important position in Chinese politics. Today, the villas of Lushan are famous around the world. They have stood on the mountain for 100 years, and each has had several owners.